Great, you're back. So this story, like I promised, is from Hawaii, and this actually comes from their legends and mythology. This story of Kamapua is about the pig boy or the pig god. He's a pig and a man. He's exciting because he's a shapeshifter. So these stories are pretty exciting. And he's also someone who is very handsome. He's a handsome warrior. He, as I said, can be a human. He can change himself into many shapes, as you will see. He oftentimes provokes the powerful. I don't know if this reminds you of somebody else that we have looked at earlier in another type of mythology, but it reminds me a little bit of a trickster in Norse mythology. Can you guess? It reminds me a little bit of Loki, because Loki was kind of always getting into scrapes, and he could be a shapeshifter as well. So sometimes this story refers to him as the pig boy, but his Hawaiian name was Kamapua, and he would sometimes be a little tiny wild piglet. Sometimes he would get to be a great big boar. He could also be a voracious, huge hog. That means like, a wild or a big, boar, pig. He could also, interestingly enough, he could also be a kui tree. So he could change into all sorts of different shapes. He could be quite the mischief maker, and he was a very powerful type of man god. So we're going to look a little bit at, and also he could have 8 eyes. So he's an interesting sort of creature. So let's read a story about him. And then as we go along and look at this story, think about the different ways that in the story he tricks the different people, and the different ways that he changes into different shapes. See if you can count how many ways he changes during the story. And we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But you see as you go along and listen to it, how many different ways that you think that he changes. And we'll look at that at the end. All right, here we go. Let me show you the cover page for this because it's so pretty. All right, Pig Boy, a trickster tale from Hawaii. These colors are all done in nice sort of Hawaiian colors and textures. He was also sort of had a reputation as being a lunar god. So that's why there's this picture of the moon here. Pig Boy, when he was born, he was a hairy little hog. His ears were pointy and his tail was curly, his back was bristly and his snout was dirty. Grandmother loved this dirty little boy. She wrapped him in soft leaves and sang him to sleep. You will be a little pig who roots in the earth. You will be a hairy hog who sails the seas. You will be a tiny fish who swims in the ocean. You will be a wild boar who carves the mountains. You will be filled with magic. And if trouble comes, she whispered, just slip away. When Pig Boy awoke, he was very hungry. He began to eat. As he ate, he began to burp. As he burped, he ate more and more and more. See how he's getting bigger? Burp. He had eaten all the roots in his grandmother's taro patch, and he was still hungry. Pig Boy ran into the king's gardens and stole the royal chickens. Uh-oh. The king and his men chased after the greedy hog. They found him in the middle of the forest. Seize him, the king commanded. Pig Boy squealed and became 100 little piglets. Then he slipped away. Remember what his grandmother had said? If trouble comes, just slip away. The king has no idea which one he is, does he? Too many to catch. 100. Wow. Pig Boy ran until he came to the shore. He looked across the sea and saw Pele, the goddess of fire, perched on her smoking mountain. He hoped she would protect him from the king and his men. Pig Boy was rowing. Pig Boy was sailing. Pig Boy was flying over the waves, rushing towards Pele. But when Pele saw the dirty, hairy little hog, she shouted, "Swine, leave me alone!" She shook the earth. She filled the sky with fire and smoke. Pig Boy squealed and jumped into the ocean. So you see, she created this volcano eruption, didn't she? She's the goddess of fire. In many stories, there are many stories of Kamapua trying to woo Pele. That means trying to get her to fall in love with him. So when he fell in, or jumped into the ocean, he became the pig-nosed fish called Huma Huma Nuka Nuka A Epua. Then he slipped away. He slipped away, just like his grandmother had taught him. There he goes. When Pig Boy leaped out of the water, the king was waiting. Look at that net. Pig Boy was caught. The king's men tied him to a pole and carried him away. Looks like he's done for now, right? What do you think? Let's find out. Snort! He grew bigger and bigger until he burst free. Look, there's those eyes I was telling you about, the 8 eyes. So he's shape changed again, right? Like magic. Look how big he is. Wow. Looks like he's slipping out of that net, isn't he? Grunt. Pig Boy ripped a path in the mountain with his bristly back. The waters rushed down and washed away the king and his men. So as the story goes, they were racing after him and he was trapped. So what he did was he backed up into this mountain where there was water high above him, and he created this big um, he carved out into the mountain up to where this water was, so that the water would then come rushing down, and it splashed all into where these men were, so that they couldn't come after him because they were washed away. So he got out of that trap, because it looked at first like he was all cornered up against that mountain. But he got away because of what he did with the water up above the mountain. Created a hole there by digging into the side of the mountain with his back. Then Pig Boy got small. He ran to grandmother. She wrapped him in soft leaves and sang him to sleep. That looks kind of like where he started, right? Pig Boy is a dreamer. He dreams of roaming the islands and sailing the seas and swimming the ocean and climbing the mountains. And if trouble comes, as it always does, he just slips away. So one of the things that we've talked about, now that we've looked at some tricksters, we looked at several things that he did to get away, didn't we? He got bigger and he got smaller. He changed into several different things, didn't he? Like into a fish. He changed into lots of different pigs, little piglets. Did you catch the fact that he changed the shapes of a mountain, and that he changed into a fish? So there were lots of different things. If I've left something out, you can send it to me in a discussion. That would be great. But he did get very good at slipping away, didn't he? And so there's lots of things when we look at the different tricksters that we've looked at over the year, with several different tricksters from different cultures, they seem to have some things in common, don't they? They're very clever. They had to be pretty smart, didn't they? They had to think kind of quickly about how to get out of scrapes, because they do seem to get into quite a few scrapes, don't they? Because they are tricking people, and people don't generally like to be tricked, do they? And they did tend to get into quite a few problems because of that. So they had to learn how to evade trouble too. Evade means they had to learn to get around or get out of trouble, or to, kind of step around it. So they had to learn how to do that. And they had to sometimes talk their way out of trouble. You remember Loki had to talk his way out of trouble a few times, didn't he? And then some of them were shapeshifters. That seemed to be a thing that seemed to be common with some of them. We know that the raven in the North American, you remember he changed himself into a pine needle. And then the raven who stole the sun, he changed himself into a pine needle. And we see here that Kamapua changed himself into several things, and Loki was able to change himself into different things. So tricksters seem to be able to change themselves into different things, don't they? And then they also seem to be pretty good at slipping away, and sometimes having other people, as we say, hold the bag. In other words, some other people have to sometimes end up with having to clean up their mess or deal with their problems, don't they? So these are the kinds of things that tricksters from lots of different cultures and mythology or legends have, those things in common, don't they? It's kind of interesting that they all tell similar stories about tricksters that have some characteristics in common, don't they? And I think that's because we kind of like to hear stories about people that trick other people, don't we? They kind of are interesting sorts of characters that we like to hear about. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story of Kamapua, who is the Hawaiian pig god, or in this case, he was just the pig boy. and he grows up to be a pig man who's very handsome and powerful. If you want to hear more stories about him when he's older, I have a link to a man who's a very good storyteller, and you can watch it down below. It's somebody just videotaped it when he was in school assembly. So you kind of have to get used to kind of hearing it through somebody's recording. But I think that once you get past the first couple of minutes, and if you turn up the volume on your video, you'll be able to hear it quite well. Anyway, I hope you have a great week, and let me know how you like these stories. And if one of them was your favorite, I'd love to know that. And I hope that you enjoy your week and have a great week. Thanks so much. Bye.